Margaret.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our February. I can't believe it's February, like it's the end of February already. Sisters in Crime Atlanta's Off the Shelf. I am so excited today that our author is Margaret Fenton. She's from Birmingham, and she has a really interesting personal life, as well as a great series that she writes. And something that I think we're all very curious about is she is the coordinator for the annual Murder in the Magic City Mystery Readers and Writers Conference. And I know that's a description of it, but it's probably not the official.
You just said it. It's just Murder in the Magic City.
Okay, Murder in the Magic City, which takes place in Birmingham in February. And several of us were there just a few weeks ago. And so we're so excited that Margaret had time in her busy schedule to chat with us today. So Margaret, welcome.
Thank you.
And I always like to start off our conversations with getting to know our authors on a more personal level than what is available if you read their bio on the back of their book. Oh, okay. And before we get started, everybody, please feel free to ask a question or raise your hand or put something in the chat. Lance is behind the scenes keeping an eye on things for us. So if you're too shy to speak up, he'll find the question or the comment and he'll speak on your behalf. So apologize for not saying that to begin with. Margaret, please tell us about yourself.
Well, like you said, I live in Birmingham, and okay, I'm fooling with the Zoom thing. I'm not a technology person, so if I start looking confused, it means that something's gone wrong over here and I'm trying to fix it. I don't need any email today right now. Hold on.
We can relate.
Yes. I am a social worker. I got my degree from the Tulane University School of Social Work in 1993, which was a hell of a long time ago. 30 years? Oh my God,
yeah.
It is 30 years.
Gosh,
anyway, so
it flies by. We get to a point in our lives where it zooms by.
Yes, and wow. And so I got my degree and I spent 2 years at the Mobile Mental Health Center down in Mobile, Alabama. And at the time I was dating this guy and he decided to form a corporation. And they did customized corporate computer software. And so he formed this corporation in Mobile and they got no business. I mean, there just wasn't any corporations down there that needed what he was willing to do. So he and his best friend moved the corporation to Birmingham. And about that time, he asked me to marry him. And I said, okay. And so I moved to Birmingham to be with what became my husband. So that's how I landed here. I love the city. I love the hills. I love the mountains. I love the lakes, and it's just been really good to us, and I'm crazy about Birmingham. So anyway, so I got this job when I got to Birmingham with a company called JBS, and the program was called Project Find. And FIND stands for Family Integrity Network Demonstration. And it was an in-home family therapy company. So we would get referrals from kids who were really at risk of being removed from their parents. And so we would go in and do 12 weeks of very intensive, sometimes 2 to 3 times a day, family therapy, trying to get these parents to do what they need to do to keep these kids in the home. Most of the time it was the parents because they just didn't know how to handle the behavior. So anyway, so I did that for about 4 years. Then I got promoted and they put me in charge of the Project Find program at the Department of Human Resources in Birmingham, which is DHR. Which is, the agency that goes out and investigates child abuse. So we had an actual Project Find team in the building. So when kids would get, taken into care, almost taken into care, we would go out and try to fix the situation before they got involved with the courts and foster care and all that stuff. And it was a great program and I loved it. And I did that for about 12 or 14 years and then decided I wanted to be a mystery writer. And I was in a car one time with Ann George, who was very, very a wonderful person. She passed away in 2001. But And we were just talking, and I was kind of talking about how I wanted to be a cozy writer because she was a cozy writer, and I had this idea about a mystery set in a nursing home, and I kind of told her about it. And she said, Margaret, you're a social worker. You probably come into contact with some pretty evil people. Yep. Yeah, I do. She said, why don't you write a mystery with a social worker as the protagonist? Thing. Okay. So that gave birth to Little Lamb Lost, which is the first book in the Clara Conover social worker series, as I'm supposed to call it now. And then after that came Little Girl Gone. I don't know if you can see these covers.
Yeah. I can see them.
And then Little White Lies is the one it's officially coming out March 7th, but I think you can kind of get it early on Amazon. But I've got a new publisher, which is wonderful news, and I adore him. I picked up this book yesterday to look up something because I didn't know I needed an answer to something, and I read the back of it and I went, oh hell, that's the book description for the first book.
Oh no.
So I emailed my publisher like immediately, Mike Orenduff. If y'all don't know him, he's a wonderful mystery writer too. And I said, the wrong description's on the back of the second book. And he wrote me back immediately. He's like, we'll fix it. It's okay. We'll fix it. And I'm like, he's great. Anyway, it's wonderful to have a publisher again. And it's wonderful to be with Achenbachen and Kent, which is the name of my publisher, which I can sometimes pronounce. So that's,
I'm sorry.
That's kind of how I got into all this. So.
Well, you went to Tulane, you said, right?
Yes.
What I feel like I heard before that you actually had a different major than what you ended up the social work.
I started out in undergraduate as a psychology major, and that was a huge mistake. The second class I ever took was parts of the brain and what they do. And I'm not a biology person, and I couldn't memorize all that. So I went to the dean of the School of Social Work because I knew I wanted to go into social work because everybody in my family is in social work. My father was a social worker. My brother was a social worker. And it was just very what we do. So I went to the dean of the School of Social Work, and I was like, I hate psychology and I don't want to major in it. She's like, don't major in what you like. And then you can apply to the graduate school and it'll be fine. And so I majored in English literature, which I love, and got a degree in English lit and went to School of Social Work after that. So.
Okay. I knew there was an interesting twist somewhere.
Yeah.
And I did know that you came from a long line of social workers or a family oriented in social work. So I was aware of that. And so where did your father, or where is your family? They're not in Birmingham because you transplanted to Birmingham.
I did. My father was born and raised in New Orleans and loves that town. And he went to Tulane. My mother went to Tulane. My grandparents went to Tulane. And when I was in high school and trying to think about where I wanted to go to school, I wanted to go to South Alabama because that's where all my friends were going. And my mother, who was dying of cancer at the time, said, but you have to go to Newcomb. And I went, oh, okay, I'll go to Newcomb because my dying mother wants me to go to Newcomb like everybody else in the family. So that's where I landed. And it was fine. I had good friends there. And New Orleans it's a lovely city in a lot of ways. It never captured me the way it captured my mother and father. I grew up in South Mississippi, and we were in New Orleans every other weekend. We'd go to Mardi Gras, and we'd go to football games at the Tulane Stadium. We'd go to Saints games, and every excuse they needed to go to New Orleans, we were there. And it's a big city, and it's fine, but I don't have any desire to go back really.
I think New Orleans is a fascinating city, and
very interesting if you know anything about the history.
Yeah, and talk about mystery and haunting and ghosts and good things
and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Casting Bones. That's a really good mystery set in New Orleans.
Yeah, it's a great environment for that. But I have not been in years, and honestly, I hadn't thought about going back until you just brought it up. And maybe it's a good trip for the family to think about.
When I was in college, yeah, because you can go to the French Quarter, and if you're 18, they'll sell you all the beer you want to drink. And it was just like, I just don't have a desire to go to that. I'm just too old, probably, that kind of party atmosphere anymore, you know?
Oh, we probably are too, to be honest with you. My husband doesn't like crowds. There's this commercial where they're like, we're not going to be our parents and say things like, okay, how fast can we leave? And that's my husband. He
Yeah,
can't
mine
wait to
too.
get out of there. Yeah. So, okay. So we know how you landed in Birmingham, and we know honestly how you got started in what was probably a fascinating career. And one thought I do have about the work that you did, I would imagine that it weighs on your heart quite a bit. And in that sense, it could be overwhelming at times.
It is very overwhelming. The reason I quit that career is because my husband and I were trying to have a baby, and I was having zero luck getting pregnant. And we just kind of thought maybe if the stress level was decreased a little bit, maybe we'd have some luck. We didn't, but that's ultimately why I left it. And then when I finished, anyway, long story, we tried to have a baby. I went on fertility drugs. This is the 2-sentence version, and I wound up with breast cancer. So I had breast cancer in 2004 and 2005. And when I finished treatment, my boss is calling me going, when are you coming back to work? And I'm like, never. And I told Bill, I said, I want to stay home and I want to write a book. And he's like, okay. Luckily, he was okay with that. We were financially in a place where he could support both of us. And so I married super well, and was able to stay home and write Little Lamb Lost and get it published from there. So,
well, that is nice. And everything is fine with
everything's fine. I am 18 or 19 years cancer free this year.
Amazing. Well, wonderful to hear that. You shocked me with that. And I was like, you saw my face. I was like, yeah, like, oh, that was just a little tidbit of your life that, but I can also, understand how you may not want to chat about that too much, but it is.
I don't mind chatting about it at all. It's just, I didn't want to get too bogged down in like talking about, it was 2 years of treatment, which nobody wants to hear. I was bald. Yes. So.
Well, but it's wonderful to know that you have come through that and you're doing great. And it led to a wonderful series. So let's start, because there's 3 books in the series. Yes. So let's just start with the first and kind of work our way through. Okay. And introduce us to your character and
Little Lamb Lost is the first book. And we get introduced to Claire Conover, who is a child welfare social worker in a slightly fictionalized Jefferson County Department of Human Services. It's called DHS in the book. It's called DHR over here in real life. And in the first book, she gets to work on a Tuesday, and one of her little clients is dead. He is 23 months old, something like that, 22 months old. I can't remember. And I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. But so the police, of course, go and arrest the child's mother because they assume that she did it, because, it's usually the parent who kills children. But Claire, my social worker, knows that she didn't do it. She doesn't know what happened, but she knows that this mother did not do it. And so she has to investigate what happened. And so that is the first book. That's Little Lamb Lost, which is dedicated to my dad, because he called me Lamb Chop for most of my life. And so I was like, well, I have to dedicate this to my father. I don't know if you can read it.
I love that. And I was going to ask you about the title. So yeah, that's adorable, honestly.
Yeah, the lamb thing is because of my dad.
Yeah.
And in the second book, Claire gets to work one day, and all of my books start on a Tuesday. I don't know why, they just do. It's a thing I do now. With the wrong description on the back. So in the second book, she gets to work, and her boss tells her to go to the Homewood Police Department and pick up this 13-year-old girl that they found sleeping behind a Piggly Wiggly. And so she goes and she picks up the girl, and the girl won't give her name, and she gets her something to eat. And about this time, she hears on the news that they found a body of a woman at this construction site. And then the girl disappears. Turns out the body at the construction site was this girl's mother, and it goes from there. So I
Okay.
was told- when I was trying to get Little Lamb Lost published, I went to Killer Nashville, which if there are any writers out there, that is a wonderful conference. And if you're an aspiring writer who wants to get published, it's a wonderful place to go and get information and meet people. And so knowing this, I had my little manuscript and I tootled up to Nashville, and you could pay an extra, I think it was $100 or $200, and meet with either an agent or someone from Ocean View Publishing. And I chose the agent, whose first name was Donna, but I've kind of blacked the rest of it out of my mind. Anyway, so I sat down with this agent. She said, tell me about your book. And I was real excited. And I was like, it's about a social worker. And she gets to work one day. One of her clients is dead, but she's got to figure out what happened. And the agent looked at me and said, nobody is ever going to want to read that. And I said, really? She said, no, this is crimes against children and they don't want to read that. I'm like, it's very off screen. It's not like I have, serious descriptions of somebody battering a child to death. I know better than that. And she said, I'm not interested. So I went to the bar. I think I told the story at Margaret Magic City too. I went to the bar and I got myself a gin and tonic. Y'all, seriously, it was big. And I was about halfway through this when my friend Don Bruns comes up to me and he says, did you talk to the agent or did you talk to Ocean View? And I thought, I talked to the agent. And it was a big mistake and she hated it. And this thing is never going to get published and it sucks.
And probably crushed your soul in that moment.
My soul was crushed and I was drowning.
Yeah.
And so he goes, I'm going to go get the Ocean View representative. And I was like, great. Okay. So he brings Mary Glenn McCombs over, who at the time was the publicist for Ocean View Publishing. But she was there scouting books for them. And she said, tell me about your book. And I said, it's about a social worker. It sucks. Nobody wants to read it. She's like, tell me about it. And so I gave her the real pitch and she said, we want to see that. And within 2 months, I had a contract and the book came out in 2009. So I finished Little Girl Gone, which is the second one. Ta-da, cover. And I sent it to Ocean View and they said, we're not publishing amateur sleuth mysteries anymore. Can you make this a thriller? No. So I just sat on it for seriously 5 years. And then I decided, well, I'll put this out myself. And so I self-published it for a while I was writing the third one, kind of self-published the third one. And that's when I met, when Mike Orenduff came to me and said, we want to publish this series. And I was like, great. So now I have a new publisher and I'm very excited about it.
That's great. I'm happy that has worked out for you. And I'm happy that you have a third book in the series coming out soon.
Yeah, well, it's out, but it's the fourth book is what I'm working on.
The fourth one. Okay. All right. So Little White Lies is the third one, and you've got a fourth in the works. Got it. So the fourth is
I have 2,000 words of that done.
Okay. So tell us about Little White Lies.
So Little White Lies is the third book in the series that I'll cover. And there's a bombing in Birmingham, because that's what we're known for. We're Birmingham. So
Birmingham.
Yeah, they called it Birmingham in the 60s because of all it was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Claire gets to work one Tuesday morning, once again, and there's a bombing at the office of a mayoral candidate. And the candidate is fine. He's found later, but they find a body in the rubble. And the body in the rubble had a daughter who was left at her daycare. So that's how Claire gets involved. She gets a call from the daycare that says this kid's been abandoned here. Somebody needs to come get it. Mm-hmm. So then she starts looking into what happened in the bombing. So that's how she gets drawn into the third one.
All right. And what about what can you tell us about the one that's coming out? What's that one called?
This one's going to be called Little Boy Blue. And if you've read the third one, Claire has a boyfriend named Grant, and Grant fires one of his employees. And in the third one, that employee that he fired files a child abuse allegation against Grant. And so Claire has got to figure out what happened because they're our kind of boyfriend. They break up at the end of book 3, but don't worry, they're getting back. So
it's not over. Yeah.
In the fourth book, you get to find out what happens when you threaten someone Claire loves.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned she's an amateur sleuth.
Yes.
And I like the fact that she has this background in social work, because I think that probably helps her be a really good sleuth, I would think. Is that?
I mean, that's true. I mean, what I did as a social worker was more therapy personally, but Claire is more of an investigator. You know, she goes out and investigates these claims that have been made about child abuse. So she kind of knows how to read people, and she knows, you know, how to sniff out when something's not right. So yeah, it does make for a good sleuth.
So this is probably a silly question, but I want to ask it anyway. In what way do you utilize your professional background as a social worker to develop your stories and your character?
You know, it's funny. People ask me sometimes if these are real stories, and I'm like, no, I would never. That would be so unethical to put a real story into a book, unless I was writing a nonfiction book, and I made that very clear and had everybody's permission. What really has helped me, there's a character in my books named Larissa. She shows up in Little Girl Gone, and she's a 13-year-old Black kid that Claire kind of sees when she's investigating something else, and she's like, why aren't you in school? And so they kind of develop a relationship. Larissa is the character that is the summation of every resilient kid I ever met when I was working at DHR. I mean, like, there's so many kids out there who are from these horrible circumstances, who somehow get themselves up every day, get themselves something to eat, and get themselves to school. And it's just remarkable how wonderful they are. And Larissa is one of those kids. So that's how it's kind of influenced my characters, especially with the kids, is that I just kind of see these, you know, these characters / kids who are just so resilient and amazing.
I definitely admire a child specifically that does have some unfortunate circumstances and still knows enough to say, I want to go to school. Because how easy is it to allow a circumstance like that to stop you from going to school, to use it as
nobody cares whether you show up or not. So yeah,
you're not getting the consequences at home if you don't go, and gee, I can't get there, and yet you hear about them walking, and sometimes they don't have shoes on, and it you know, and you say to yourself, wow, the fact that they want to do that, they're going to the extreme because they want to.
Because they're getting something in school that nurtures them, and most of the time it's because that's where the food is. Honestly, we treated this little kid when I was at Mobile Mental Health. This was 30 years ago. And he was 10, and his mother was severely addicted to crack. And he would get himself up every day, seriously, y'all, and walk to school. And it was like 6 miles.
Oh.
And he would come there because there was breakfast and lunch. I mean, that was the only way he was going to get fed. It's really tragic.
It is. It's heartbreaking. So, let's try to get on a lighter note. I'd like
a coffee mug.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
I love it too. That's a lighter note.
I need one of those. So tell us about Claire, as you know, her personality, and I absolutely love her name. That is one of the best names I've come upon.
Well, thank you. Claire was my mother's middle name. My mother died when I was 19 of cancer, and Claire was her middle name. And then my father's middle name is Conover, and that was my grandmother's surname before she got married. So that's where her name comes from. And it's really a tribute to my parents and grandparents who read to me when I was, you know, a baby and 2 and 3 years old. They would read whatever was in the house, and it just fostered such a love of reading in me. And I just owe them so much for that. So Claire is based on a lot of the social workers I knew at DHR. And she's kind of a work addict. She's a workaholic. Really feels like she just can't do enough to make the world a better place. She can't lie, which is her biggest problem. She can't tell an untruth to anybody. Everybody can see right through her. What was the question? I'm sorry.
I just wanted you to introduce us to her, tell us about her personality. And
she's kind of a workaholic. She tends to rescue strays, not animals, but people.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
Yeah. So she is from Birmingham, the character is. She grew up in an area of town here called Bluff Park. What else? You
mentioned she's single.
She's single. She's got in the first book, she meets a boy named Grant, who is based on my husband, tall, gorgeous geek. And they start a relationship, which continues in Little Girl Gone, and then in Little White Lies, she screws it all up. I was mad at her. Seriously, there's these questions like, so somebody asked on Facebook, you ever read a book and you've been so mad at the character you had to close the book? I'm like, yes, I wrote one. Like I was so mad at her at the end of Little White Lies. I was like, I don't know if I'll go back to you, but she's talking in my head again. So
I'd like to hear that she has taken on a life of her own, and that as much as she is your creation, she has actually become like her own person within you and is telling her own story.
Yes.
I like that.
Characters who talk to me all the time. Larissa's the loudest. I can hear her voice in my head, and it's really, I mean, she's now 14 and she acts like a 14-year-old girl, and it's just so frustrating sometimes. Because 14-year-olds are annoying.
For those of us with teenagers, we're probably like, yeah.
Yeah.
We remember, or we know, or we remember, or we're about to experience it ourselves. So Claire's character arc through I guess the fourth book is almost out, so we can say through the 4 books.
It has 4,000 words in it. It's not nearly out.
Oh, okay.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, you're trudging along. Okay, so tell us about a day in the life of Margaret Fenton while she's working on a book.
She crawls out of bed at about 9 a.m. and goes straight to the computer. I read something online one time that said that the creative part of your brain wakes up first and the logical part of your brain wakes up later. And I found that, at least with me, to be very true. Like if I just go to the computer straight out of sleep, I write better than any other time of the day. And I write in the mornings, probably from about 9 in the morning until a little after noon. And by the afternoon, my brain is just dead. And so there's other things that have to be done. So I have 3 dogs that I care for. So they have to be walked and fed and snuggled and all of that. So
is that your routine even on a weekend?
Yes.
Yeah. So 7 days a week, you dedicate like 3 hours.
If it's a good week, yeah. I'm not real good about writing every day, which is why I've published 3 novels in 20 years. I mean, we have, anyway, there's just a lot of other stuff going on. My father is still alive, but he has very severe dementia, and he lives in a nursing home that takes wonderful care of him. So one day a week I go over there and sort of check on him and take him out for ice cream. And, so, I mean, there's just life things that come up that prevent me from writing. But, when I'm really fired up about it, I tend to do it every day. And Murder in the Magic City gets me more fired up than anything.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, because I have, authors that want to talk about books, and we talk about writing, and I get really energized from being around other authors.
Mm-hmm. And great segue into Murder in the Magic City, actually. So let's go ahead and talk about that. It celebrated its 20th year earlier this month. And that's just flabbergasting to me. So tell us how it got started, where the idea came from.
Okay, so how it got started is I have a friend named Heidi who was one of the original Reacher creatures. Like, she's been a fan of Lee Child since the beginning, when nobody knew who he was, before the movies and the television show and all that stuff. And in 2002, Tammy Lynn is trying to reach me. Anyway, sorry. So in 2002, Heidi said, I think I can get Lee Child to come to Birmingham. And we were all like, okay, great. She's like, let's do a conference. It can be just for readers, and we'll get some names, and it'll be great. And so we did. And Lee Child came to Birmingham and hung out with her for the whole weekend, which is what she wanted. And okay. Oh my God, I just got a text from Tammy. Jeffrey Deaver is interested in Murder in the Magic City.
Yay!
Oh my God.
What a great announcement.
That was God, let's hope. I don't have him booked yet, but let's hope. Oh my God, thank you, Tammy. What was I talking about?
Okay, you were talking about Heidi.
So Heidi said we can get Lee here. She got Lee here. We did the first one. It went really well. We had lots of authors. Everybody had a great time. And then she decided she didn't want to do this anymore because she had little kids and other things going on. And I was like, well, I'm going to continue it. so I did. And so the second year we had Charles Todd and Reese Bowen.
Mhm.
Like Reese Bowen is just the most amazing writer, and she's so sweet. And so I'll tell you some funny stories about glitches we have had.
Yeah.
So the one thing we heard from all the writers is you have to have a hotel with a bar, because writers like to sit in the bar and talk about writing and drink. So the hotel we used the first year did not have a bar. So that was a big no-no. So the second year we booked rooms at the Embassy Suites here in Birmingham. Don't ever stay at an Embassy Suites hotel. So what they did not tell us is that on the weekends, because they're a businessman's hotel and they're not really full in the weekends, they rent out the rooms. Oh my God, that's Don Bruns telling me Jeff said he wants to talk to me. Ah! Oh my God, that's so exciting.
Right now, let's get him on the program.
Jeffrey Beaver.
A twofer. Jeffrey
that'd be so
Gepfer and
funny.
Margaret Fenton.
Anyway, so the hotel the second year was a disaster, and they had 13-year-olds. What the hotel does is they rent rooms out to 13-year-old girls for slumber parties if the rooms are not full. So I had Reese Bowen, Charles Todd, and a lot of other people from this conference at this hotel, and the 13-year-olds were leaving chicken bones in the elevator, and they were pulling the fire alarm all night, and it was just a disaster. And the 3 o'clock in the morning, they pulled the fire alarm, and I walked out of my room, and you can kind of see down to the lobby, and there's Reese Bowen in her overcoat and nightgown screaming at the desk clerk, and I thought, I just want to die. I just want to die. And so we never went back to the hotel, and I don't recommend anybody ever stay there. So the third year we had, who did we have third year? That might have been the cozy year. We did Parnell Hall, and he was great. And we found this hotel, the Drury Inn, which is wonderful. And I went to the manager and I said, look, we're going to have a cocktail party. And she's like, we have this little cocktail service at 5, and the hotel was sold out. Nobody could get a drink because the line for the bar was around the building. And so the next year after that, I went to the manager and I said, I'm bringing in my own booze. If you have a problem with that, tell me now, and I'll find somewhere else. And she's like, no, you can do it. So that was the birth of the world famous Margaret Fenton rolling tailgate party. And I roll into that room with a cooler every year that has all kinds of alcohol in it. We just hang out in the meeting room and just have fun.
Well, I feel like you've kind of glossed over a little bit about how
I'm on tangent. Sorry.
How hard it is to coordinate such a big event. And you have mentioned some major headliners here, and the fact that you're opening your inaugural conference, you had a big name. And that, like, well, how do you even reach out to someone and get them interested, especially when you didn't have a history of, you were just getting started. You were like, hey, we got an idea and we think this could be fun.
It's amazing how wonderful mystery authors are. When you come to them and say, we want to do a conference, or we want you to come talk to your fans, they will show up. It is really great. Oh my God, Jeffrey Deaver. Okay. So I would go to like VoucherCon or Malice Domestic, or, I used to go to those two every year. I haven't been in a few years, just because of COVID, and travel's a nightmare, and, but I would just meet them at VoucherCon or Malice and say, hey, we do this conference, and can you please come participate? And they're like, yeah, sure. The one really funny one, I'm a huge Laura Lippman fan. Back when she was writing her series, her Tess Monahan series, I love that series of books. And so I kind of fangirled at her at VoucherCon one year. I kind of walked up and I went, she's like, okay, take a deep breath and tell me what you need. And I was like, and she was like, oh, you're crazy, but what do you need? And I was like, we do this conference in Birmingham, and she agreed to come, and she came and brought her producer husband, David Simon, which was really kind of exciting. They went on a barbecue tour of Birmingham.
So how long does it take you? Like, are you literally planning, like, already? We just had a few at the beginning of the month. We had the 20th anniversary Murder in the Magic City. So when do you start planning the 21st? I know already because you got Jeffrey Deaver on the line.
I hope so. Like I said, the moment we finish Murder in the Magic City, I am so fired up. I'm ready to write. I'm ready to plan the next one. I have a lot of energy about this. And so we Tammy and I co-plan these conferences. Tammy Lynn, who lives in Atlanta and should be here.
Yeah, exactly. Where is she?
Right. Tammy Lynn came to me when we were about in year 5, I guess. I think it was 2007 or 6. And she said, I want to do a piggyback event with you where the authors come to Murder in the Magic City in Birmingham, and then they come to Wetumpka. And it's great for the authors because it's 2 events, 2 audiences. This will benefit our library. And I was really hesitant because I thought, planning Murder in the Magic City takes up an enormous amount of my time. I don't want to plan a second one I don't know, but I agreed to try it for 1 year. And she and I we've become really good friends, and she is really great about helping me recruit authors. It's nice to have a helper when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how we got started with doing the Murder on the Menu thing in Wetumpka. I kind of plan it all throughout the year. I really start earnestly in July, contacting authors, seeing who can come. It's been really difficult these past couple of years because of COVID. And I know so many people who are I'm just not traveling anymore because of COVID, because the airlines are such a nightmare. And so getting people to come the past couple of years has been really difficult. We've got some wonderful support from Deborah Goldstein, who may be here. I don't know.
Yeah, she was. I saw Deborah. Deborah, are you still here? If you're muted, unmute.
I am here.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello again.
Hi. Well,
Always a joy. And she
Deborah
does,
can,
they do wonderful work.
well, and Deborah, I know you are a frequent attendee, but you've also been on the panel for the 2 years that I have attended. You did a panel both times.
Because I did it back to back with COVID. So
Yes.
I got to be on both ends of COVID is what happened with different books. And I won't take up Margaret's time. I started as a reader there. Friends dragged me there well before I started writing. So I must have been there 3 years as a reader. Then I wrote my first book, and one thing led to another. And that, about 8 months later, Margaret invited me to be one of the local authors, who are regional authors. Mm-hmm. And I got so excited because that was my very first conference, Murder in the Magic City. The next day was Murder on the Menu. And that was the first time somebody bought a name. And I've told that story to this group, so I'm not going to repeat it, but Deborah Holt bought it. And again, this time, I think Deborah Holt has bought me every time I've ever been there.
She's bought me too, and I don't know what to do about it. I don't know what
I'm using. Well, if the new book sells, I'm using her. She now gives you a card with 5 other potential names.
Really?
So I am using her as both Mrs. Holt and Aunt Daba in this book.
Okay.
And I'm not the only one who's been on. Sharon's been on the panel. I'm not sure about Mary. I think, Mary, you were Killer in Nashville with me. But I know Sharon has, because I bought Sharon's book when it came out, and she was at Murder in the Magic City. And now I will be quiet and go back into my hole.
No, you're fine.
Because I'm sitting here without any light.
Well, just for anybody who doesn't know, Deborah Holt is a reader.
Yeah, reader fan.
A big fan.
Yes.
And do you guys have an auction or something where you can sign up?
Yes, Murder on the Menu has an auction where people can bid and donate money to the library. And if you win the auction, then you get to be a character in whatever author has donated this. So she is an FBI agent in Little White Lies.
Mm-hmm.
And she won the auction again this year. And I'm like, well, shit, I don't know what she's already a character in the 3rd one. I don't need an FBI agent for the 4th one. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to I don't know. I'm going to have to talk to her because I don't know.
Make a puppy dog and name it Holty.
Yeah.
Oh, how cute.
She's willing to be anything. She's been a dead body. She's been a pole dancer. And I will quickly tell the funny story. I had no idea. The year after, 6 months, 8 months later, I am moderating a panel at Malice, and I always read, when I moderate, I read everybody's most current book. So I'm reading, well, Lori Rader Day had her breakout book, but she's not in there. The next guy has somebody doing dog walking, and it's Deborah Holt. The next person has an academic mystery, and there's Debbie Holt. And I keep reading, and she's in all the books. And then I'm looking around, and I'm realizing from when I had been a reader, everybody on this panel except Lori had been at Murder on the Magic City somewhere in the last 4 years, 5 years. And that's how, and we all started laughing because I was working her into my next book at the time.
Mm-hmm. I think she's donated, I don't know how much money to the Wetumpka Library to get these auctions, which is very generous of her. But yeah, I told Tammy I was gonna put her in my book with someone who's obsessed with winning.
Well, I think she doesn't do as much. She doesn't do as much hands-on during the year as she does underwriting things there.
Yes.
And then one of the nice things she does is when you put her in your book, like with Margaret, when she will buy 6 to 8 copies of your book, and at Christmas she has everybody over for a luncheon, her girlfriends. Mm-hmm. She puts them all on a table, and she gives everybody a plastic bag and tells them to take 6 to 8 books.
Nice. Okay.
From anybody's as her going home. So if you think about it, she's usually in 8 to 10 books a year, and every author is
fun.
Yeah. And I know when my foot was rebuilt and I couldn't come to any conferences, and they had been starting to read my books, all of a sudden I get a picture, and she had bought 8 copies, and she had her friends all holding them up. And they said, if you can't come to us, we're coming to you.
Oh, that's very sweet.
Yeah. So I think of her special that way.
Cheers.
So that's a great example of like the connections and the fun that you can have at Murder in the Magic City. And as I said, I've gone 2 years, and Charlie was the one who mentioned it to me last year, and I do everything based on the Braves schedule. And so the first, I was like, wait, I can go in February. So Margaret, I beg you, don't change to another part of the year.
No,
works for me.
I'll tell you why we're in February.
I would like to know. Mm-hmm.
But 20 years ago, we were talking about having this conference. We kind of said, April and May is beautiful in Birmingham. It's green and it's lovely and the weather's nice. It's a little wet sometimes, but it's a really beautiful time of year. So we started calling around to hotels to kind of see like where we could base this thing. And nobody would sell us a block of rooms. And so we said, well, why won't they sell us, why won't they block off 20 rooms for us? Talladega. There is a huge race course just east of here on the way to Atlanta, actually. Talladega doesn't have any hotel rooms for some reason. And so a lot of the people, there's 250,000 people that come to these races. Okay, I don't get it. You drive around in circles, but whatever. So all the hotels in Birmingham sell out with the people who were going to Talladega. And so they're like, we can't sell you. And I was like, well, what if we do it on a different weekend from Talladega? They said they never announce it until 3 months before. So we hold all the rooms for April and May until they announce race weekend. And I was like, okay, fine, we'll do it in, February. So we just kind of picked the first weekend in February. So that's how we landed where we landed.
Well, it definitely works for me. And I went, didn't know what to expect, and I enjoyed it so much, and I could not wait for this year to be able to come again. And I'm definitely interested in attending in the future. And I'm kind of excited about what Deborah said, because she said that she attended for 3 years as a reader, and then she started writing. And I'm like, well, hey, maybe next year.
Are you writing a book?
Next year? No, I like to read. I'm not writing. But I think about it. I do think about writing, but I just haven't.
You do it. Just sit down and write one.
I know, that's what they say.
Oh my God. But with a baseball player, you could do a baseball mystery.
Right. That would be fun. That would be fun.
That's how I got started when Ann George said to me, you should have a social worker as a protagonist. Holy shit, that works.
Yeah, well, because you probably thought, you know what? Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot that I can be inspired by to, put into a story. And I'll tell you, Margaret, another thing I like about your books is that to me, it is a little taboo, as that one agent said to you, oh, nobody wants to hear about that. But yet it's important.
It is
important to get it out there, the things that happen and the people that are trying to help fix it.
And I think that if we ignore it, it's not going to go away. I mean, if we
Right.
don't talk about child abuse, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Right.
Child pornography or whatever. We have to talk about the fact that it's out there and we have to stop it. And so, I don't want to throw it in anybody's face, because yes, child abuse can be a really horrific thing, but I think it's important to get the word out there that there are people who will help. And there's a lot of, the other thing that drives me crazy, there's a lot of misconceptions about child welfare social workers that I want to get the word out there that that's not how it works. I've had so many people when I was working in this field come up to me and go, you can't just take my child. And I'm like, you're right. I can't take your child. The court has to order that I take your child. And then we go for hearing after hearing after hearing. Like, it's not like a social worker can just swoop in and take your child away because they feel like it or because they're mad at you or whatever. It all has to go through the court system, and it's a very detailed system. So, I want to get the word out there that social workers are not the evil people that they often get portrayed as, especially in movies and things like that. So, it's another.
Yeah, I like it. And like I said, I think it's important to tell that side of the story. So I cannot believe this, but we are actually getting close to our hour. So I want to open it up to our audience. If anybody has any questions, for Margaret, please chime in. I do have another question. I'm going to hog the spotlight for a moment, but tell us about your actual writing process. Do you outline your story, or do you just kind of do you start with an idea and just see where it takes you?
I am the ultimate pantser. I sit down at the computer, and at the time I start a book, I know what the crime is, and I know who probably did it, but that's all I start with. And I just sit down and write, and it all comes from a very spiritual place. It's a very, it's a very subconscious thing. I don't outline anything. Occasionally, if I'm in the middle of a book, you will find sticky notes all over my computer, and those are like reminders to me to go and tie this loose end up, or don't forget about this character, or something like that. But outline, no. I just sit down and write.
Well, I wondered, especially since you had indicated that Claire made you mad. I was like, well, that doesn't sound like she planned that at all. So that
was actually a planned thing, but I was still mad at her. It had to happen to get the conflict to move the story forward, but she cheats on Grant. That's what happens in the third book.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I get why she did it. I get where it came from, but man, I was mad at her. Like, why'd you do that?
Yeah. But like you said, you needed something to just
it had to happen.
Yeah.
The best writing advice I've ever received from anybody, and I can't remember who it was, maybe Chris Grabenstein, said, you want to write these wonderful stories for your characters, and they're happy and in happy relationships and happy, but conflict is what people want to read about. Conflict that they have to overcome is what moves the story along. So you have to put your beloved characters in situations that are trying for them or bad for them. And I found that to be more true than anything else that anybody's ever told me. Or as Dwayne Swarzynski once told me, if you get stuck in a book, throw another body in.
Throw another dead body in, or just
okay. Kill somebody else. I'm like, okay.
Okay. All right.
Wayne Swarzynski was here in a year when he was trying to finish a book, and he would come down and have a drink with us, and then go back to his room and type for 20 minutes and come down and have a drink with us. And it was just funny because people were like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm blowing everybody up. Anyway, he's funny.
So we have a lot to look forward to coming from you. We have a fourth Claire Conover. Do you think there'll be a fifth?
That's kind of up to the publisher. I hope. I mean, I can't even, I don't think more than one book ahead, because my brain gets so tangled if I do that. So I mean, if Achenbachen and Kent wants another book, then yeah, there'll be another book.
All right.
I'm also writing a cozy. Deborah Goldstein, I hope you're listening to me. And I'm rating it with my mother-in-law, which is a lot of fun.
I
Linda,
bet.
Linda is a canner. Linda, to quote my father-in-law, will can anything that's around and where's the cat. So I am writing a canning mystery. It's super cozy. It takes place in a fictional town in Alabama called Magnolia Grove. And these two retired women are bored after they retire. And one of them has canned all the stuff she needs to sell. So they go and get licensed and open a gift shop in downtown Magnolia Grove. And on their opening night, the local lawyer is stabbed to death in their kitchen. So that's not good for business.
No. It
But it sounds like it's going to be good for us as a readers.
I hope so.
Yes, I'm looking forward to. I hope you push through with that. I think, and I love that you're doing it with your mother-in-law. I think
Yeah,
that's,
she provides all the recipes and stuff. She's really funny. She's great.
and she helps with the murder with the
basket.
conference, right?
The basket auction. We do a
Yeah.
basket auction every year to raise money for this wonderful charity in Florence, Alabama called Chloe's Fund. Chloe's Fund will donate money to veterinarians who treat animals who come into the shelter that are injured or sick or whatever, so that they can get adopted. So if they've been hit by a car and they come in with a broken leg, Chloe's Fund will like pay for their repair. So it's a great and important charity that we are happy to donate to every year.
It is a very, and it's a wonderful cause. That's amazing. So we have a lot to look forward to. Again, we've got an upcoming Margaret Fenton. We have a cozy on the horizon. We also have potentially Jeffrey Deaver at next year's.
Oh my God, yes. If he says yes, I'm going to announce that everywhere. So watch our Facebook page. Yeah.
Yes, we'll stay.
Magic City has a Facebook page where I post all the time. I post like if authors that have come before are trying to, have a book coming out or they are at a conference, I will post all their stuff. So please follow us on Facebook.
Please do. And the one thing I want to point out is, like I said, I've gone 2 years. Charlie's been in the past, and we're both driving from the Atlanta area. It's an easy drive. And Birmingham is really a nice place, to stay. I'm very comfortable there. I enjoy the atmosphere. I almost don't want to go home when it's time to go home. I haven't partaken in the menu, Murder on the Menu in Wetumpka. I haven't done that. Maybe I'll do that next year.
It's fun. I mean, it's a lot of, I don't want to say it's the same program, but you'll hear a lot of the same stuff, but it's still really, that we do different panels the next day. So it's fun.
Yeah,
I'm usually so brain dead. Like they're out there asking me questions and I'm just like, what was the question? I have no idea what's going on here.
I bet it takes a lot of work to pull that off. Charlie, do you have something?
Yeah, I think Tammy Lynn joined our chapter last meeting, and she's going to be a great addition. I know how much help she's been to Margaret.
She's great. Yeah,
and it's a great conference. It's a great conference for somebody that wants to get up close and personal with an author. I mean, it's a fantastic.
It is.
Are you a cat fan?
Did you see him hold his cat earlier?
Charlie, you like cats, huh? I love that wall.
Oh, yeah. Well, Linda and I had a conversation about that when I was there. So her mother-in-law, Linda Fenton.
She doesn't want any cats, but she has 3. The latest one that adopted her is a black cat whose name is Sid Vicious.
Oh, what a cute name.
He's not very friendly, which is why he has the name Sid Vicious. I pick on her a lot because these strays come and find her, and she tends to name them whatever color they are. So her current cats are orangey, and then she adopted this gray one, and we're like, you can't call it Gray-y. Like you have to find some other name. And so that one's name is Biscuit because it constantly, does the making biscuits.
Yeah.
And so then Sid Vicious showed up, and
I think that's a clever name. Sid Vicious is adorable. Yeah. So what we'll do on our end, we will definitely help promote it more, through our chapter and on our Facebook page, because and we've already started talking about a bigger group going and joining in on the fun next year. we have several authors that would love to be panelists and all that. And so we can talk about that. But I want to put it out there and encourage people, if you can get to Birmingham in early February and you want to meet some authors up close and personal, it's a lot of fun. It's worth it. And
if you guys come from Atlanta, we have the cocktail party on Friday night at the hotel, and y'all are welcome to come. I mean, yeah, come hang out and have a drink with your favorite author.
I love that idea. And so we look forward to hearing more about that. We look forward to Little Boy Blue when it comes out. Pick up your Margaret Fenton series if you haven't already, and learn a little bit more about her work, her professional work through her books, through her stories, as well as introduce yourself to an amazing Claire Conover.
Yes. Thank you. This has been really, really fun. I really, really love doing these things. I'm so glad I got the Zoom to Zoom. So
you're a pro now.
I wouldn't go that far, but I got it to work, which is always kind of exciting.
Exactly. I'm a little leery of it. I don't like it when Angela's not here because I'm like, what if something goes wrong? Right. But Angela isn't here. I had told you we had a techie that would help us, and she unfortunately couldn't make it, and yet we did fine. As far as we know, we recorded and we'll be able to post.
Great. Okay. Perfect.
We may not find out until after, but so far so good. Except we lost Lance. But
no, I'm here.
Well, we know, but we lost you visually.
Well, you didn't lose much.
Oh.
Thank you, Margaret. This was amazing. I did get to go to the one in 2019, Murder in the Magic City, and Sharon was on a panel that year. And really enjoyed it. Look forward to going back.
Good. Well, hopefully see y'all. We have the dates already. February 3rd for Murder in the Magic City and February 4th for Murder on the Menu.
Okay, great.
So,
I'm writing them down.
I will be in the hotel.
With your cooler.
Just as a reminder to everyone, Dawn, we have Reader Rendezvous coming up.
Yes. So next Saturday we have Readers Rendezvous, and what that is, it's open. Everybody can join. We do it via Zoom, and it's just readers and authors getting together and chatting, talking about what books we're reading or what movies we're watching, what television shows we're enjoying in the mystery genre, and just sharing. I'm sorry?
Will Trent, have y'all watched Karen Slaughter's new show on ABC on Tuesdays?
I have not, but some of our other readers have watched it.
That's why I'm stalking her. I really want her to come to Birmingham.
And I think she'd be a good conversation, especially about Will Trent, because the character is not the character that is portraying him on television is not the descriptive character in the book.
Yeah, I started reading the books, and it's like, this is not at all like the TV show, but still very good.
Exactly. So I think that would be a great conversation, honestly. If we can get her, even though you've got this other headliner, if
I could get Jeffrey DeVray and Karen Slaughter, I may just die of happiness. I mean, really good. That would be so amazing.
Seems like we should just be able to drive up to her house and knock on her door, right?
Right? You live there.
She's here in Atlanta somewhere.
She lives in Ponce Island. She lives in Ponce.
Find her.
Yeah.
I can find her. So, but Margaret, thank you for your time. We know you had to get up early to join us. We appreciate that. And I'm so grateful that you were available today.
Oh, I'm happy to do it anytime. If you know of authors that want to come to Murder in the Magic City as panelists, please send me their names.
Okay.
We're putting together a file and I'll send them an invitation after the summer.
All right. That works for us.
Okay.
And happy to collaborate with you on that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And again, next Saturday, Readers Rendezvous, if you want to join us, it's like a fireside chat, 10 a.m. via Zoom, and the link will be on our Sisters in Crime Atlanta Facebook page.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Also, coming up in March is our chapter meeting on the 11th at 10:30. And once again, we will try to do that as a hybrid meeting. And our guest speaker will be Grace Winter, who will talk about editing.
All right. I'll be there.
Okay.
Okay.
All
All right.
Bye.
Barry, thanks for joining us.
Bye, y'all.
Bye. Oh, hey, Mary. Lance, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, try to turn your screen back on. Let's see if we can talk. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
Sharon's here.
Show yourself. Reveal.
She's
She hang
wandered off. She wandered off.
Oh, so just her empty
I'm
chair?
driving. I'm driving.
Oh.
I did it on my phone this time so I could listen to the whole thing. So I'm listening while I'm driving. So I can't talk. I don't think I can show my camera.
You know, Sharon, I've tried to do that so that I can, like, if I'm driving home and we're having a meeting, and I can't always get the Zoom to work. And so that's why I either stay at work and join our meeting, or Lance, have you stopped recording?
No.